Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. And this is Mackey, Albert Gallatin, from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Albert G. Mackey. Mackey, Albert Gallatin, the American Masonic historian. He was born at Charleston, South Carolina, March 12, 1807. This scholarly brother lived to the age of 74 years. He died at Fortress Monroe, Virginia, June 20th, 1881, and was buried at Washington, District of Columbia, Sunday, June 26th, with all the solemnity of the Masonic Rites, wherein he had long been an active leader. From 1834, when he was graduated with honors at the Charleston Medical College, until 1854, he gave attention to the practice of his profession. But from that time on, literary and Masonic labors engrossed his efforts. Dr. Mackey was a Union adherent during the Civil War, and in July 1865, President Johnson appointed him Collector of the Port. In a contest for senatorial honors, Brother Mackey was defeated by Senator Sawyer. Dr. Mackey removed to Washington, District of Columbia, in 1870. Dr. Mackey was initiated, passed, and raised in St. Andrew's Lodge No. 10, Charleston, South Carolina, in 1841. Shortly thereafter, he affiliated with Solomon's Lodge No. 1, also of Charleston, and was elected Worshipful Master in December 1842. From 1842 until 1867, he held the office of Grand Secretary, and during this period prepared all the reports of the Foreign Correspondence Committee of the Grand Lodge. In 1851, he was a founder member of Landmark Lodge No. 76. During the winter of 1841 and 1842, he was advanced and exalted in capitular Freemasonry, elected High Priest in December 1844, and also elected Deputy Grand High Priest in 1848, and successively reselected until 1855. From 1855 to 1867, he was each year elected as Grand High Priest of his state. Elected in 1859 to the office of General Grand High Priest, he continued in that position until 1868. Created a Knight Templar in South Carolina, Commandery No. 1, in 1842, he was elected Eminent Commander in 1844, later being honored as a past Grand Warden of the Grand Encampment of the United States. Crowned as Sovereign Grand Inspector General of the 33rd and last degree in 1844, he was for many years Secretary General of the Supreme Council, Southern Jurisdiction of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. As a contributor to the literature and science of Freemasonry, Dr. Mackey's labors have been more extensive than those of any other in America or in Europe. In 1845, he published his first Masonic work, entitled A Lexicon of Freemasonry. In 1851, he published his second work entitled The True Mystic Tie. Then followed the Ahiman Rezon of South Carolina, 1852, Principles of Masonic Law, 1856, Book of the Chapter, 1858, Textbook of Masonic Jurisprudence, 1859, History of Freemasonry in South Carolina, 1861, Manual of the Lodge, 1862, Cryptic Masonry, 1867, Symbolism of Freemasonry and Masonic Ritual, 1869, Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, 1874, and Masonic Parliamentary Law, 1875. Dr. Mackey also contributed freely to Masonic periodicals and edited several of them with conspicuous ability. In 1849, he established and edited the Southern and Western Masonic Miscellany for 5 years. In 1857, he undertook the publication of the Masonic Quarterly Review, which continued for 2 years. Then he was invited to assume editorial charge of a department in the American Freemason, which he accepted in July 1859, and he held this position for 1 year. He was solicited to take charge of a department in the Masonic Trowel, his first article appearing in the September number of 1865, and he wrote for this publication for nearly 3 years. In October 1871, Dr. Mackey again published a Masonic magazine of his own, Mackey's National Freemason. Although a periodical of great merit, after 3 years it was discontinued. In January 1875, Dr. Mackey became one of the editors of the Voice of Masonry, and for over 4 years was a constant contributor to that periodical, when failing health necessitated his giving up this work. After Dr. Mackey located at Washington, District of Columbia, he affiliated with Lafayette Lodge No. 19, Lafayette Chapter No. 5, and Washington Commandery No. 1. The funeral services in Washington in 1881 were begun at All Souls Church Unitarian, of which Dr. Mackey was a member, by the pastor, and were followed by the ceremonies of a Lodge of Sorrow, Rosicroix chapter, ancient and accepted Scottish rite, southern jurisdiction, and were in charge of the Venerable General Albert Pike and his associate officers. General Albert Pike wrote a touching and appreciative message at the time of the death of Dr. Mackey, which was sent out officially by the Sovereign Grand Commander of the Southern Jurisdiction, in which the various Masonic bodies were instructed to drape in black the altars and working tools, and the brethren will wear the proper badge of mourning during the space of 60 days. The following memorial was presented by a committee headed by Brother Charles F. Stansbury at a special communication of the Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia. Our illustrious brother Albert Gallatin Mackey is no more. He died at Fortress Monroe, Virginia on the 20th day of June, 1881, at the venerable age of 74, and was buried at Washington on Sunday, June 26, 1881, with the highest honors of the craft, all rites and orders of Masonry, uniting in the last sad services over his remains. The announcement of his death has carried a genuine sentiment of sorrow wherever Freemasonry is known. His ripe scholarship, his profound knowledge of Masonic law and usage, his broad views of Masonic philosophy, his ceaseless and invaluable literary labors in the service of the order, his noble ideal of its character and mission, as well as his genial personal qualities and his lofty character, had united to make him personally known and vividly respected and beloved by the Masonic world. While this Grand Lodge shares in the common sorrow of the craft everywhere at this irreparable loss, she can properly lay claim to a more intimate and peculiar sense of bereavement, inasmuch as our illustrious brother had been for many years an active member of this body, chairman of the Committee on Jurisprudence, and an advisor ever ready to assist our deliberations with his knowledge and counsel. In testimony of our affectionate respect for his memory, the Grand Lodge jewels and insignia will be appropriately draped, and its members near the usual badge of mourning for 30 days. A memorial page of our proceedings will also be dedicated to the honor of his name. We extend to his family the assurance of our sincere and respectful sympathy, and direct that an attested copy of this minute be transmitted to them. In the eulogy over Dr. Mackey, delivered by past Grand Master Henry Buist of Georgia before the Supreme Council for the Southern Jurisdiction, he said of the doctor, "He was a fearless and gifted speaker. His language was courteous and manner dignified, and occasionally in his earnestness to maintain what he conceived to be right, he became animated and eloquent. Positive in his convictions, he was bold in their advocacy. His course of action once determined on, supported by an approving conscience, no fear or disfavor or discomfiture could swerve him from his fixed purpose. Whatever was the emergency, he was always equal to it. Where others doubted, he was confident. Where others faltered, he was immovable. Where others queried, he affirmed. He was faithful to every public and Masonic duty. Treachery found no place in his character. He never betrayed a trust. He was eminently sincere and loyal to his friends, and those who were most intimately associated with him learned to appreciate him the most. He was generous and frank in his impulses, and cherished malice toward none and charity for all. His monument is in the hearts of those who knew him longest and best. He is no longer of this earth. His work among men is ended. His earthly record is complete. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.